All right. Hey, Mark, you have the recording going on. Anything else we need to get underway here?
Yep, go right ahead.
Right. Sure. Screen. So yeah, my name is Watson Harding. I'm the GIS specialist here with the Kentucky 911 Services Board, and today I just want to kind of go over some GIS basics for beginners. I apologize for office noise in the background if that's getting picked up, but yeah, this is going to be kind of this is more of a high level kind of overview. I think that we're going to have much more regular training in the nitty gritty, but this is just kind of going over some terms, some considerations to make when purchasing software and having a plan for maintaining your GIS data. And without further ado, I will get underway here. So our outline, as I mentioned, I'm going to cover some basics, what exactly GIS is, how exactly it works with Next Generation 911, some of your options for software, and then there's going to be a section I think some really helpful tips for folks out there, and then going to leave a pretty healthy margin for questions. So, number one, what is GIS? It's pretty simply put, it's data that has a spatial aspect. So we have both the location of a feature, whether that's a point, a line, a polygon, and where that feature is located is also associated with the attributes of the feature. So that's your tabular data. So for instance, fire hydrants are points, so it's the location of the hydrant, but we can attach to that necessary information, so flow capacity, last inspection, etc. It's a nice illustration of really what we're able to do is not just have these things exist in their own little world, but with spatial data, we can investigate the relationship between different geographic features. And so GIS is really foundational to Next Generation 911. Simply put, it's the means by which the caller is going to be connected with the PSAP. And that works because vast majority of cell phones nowadays are broadcasting an XY location, and it goes up into the magic ether, and it's compared against the polygons representing PSAPs, so like who should answer the call. And it's of course a little bit more to it, but simply put, we're connecting caller location to the appropriate PSAP, reducing transfers, other things that delay response. And doing so help to save lives. So NG911 is coming. The Services Board has been allocated the funding. We are currently in the RFP process. I mean, this is something that is underway. This isn't something that's several years down the road. It's coming. And what we're needing are statewide layers to support geospatial routing in particular, but really like a lot of the core infrastructure of NG911. And how we've gone about that is by aggregating each individual PSAP's GIS data submission. So we've contracted with Geocom to QC and aggregate those submissions. So these will be sent out later, but yeah, if you haven't been to the landing page, this is just the main Geocom landing page. The actual login is up here at the top. Below here is a picture, but yeah, this just has some of the prior trainings, as with anything, we try to keep this up to date as best as possible, but things change. For instance, this hub helper tool, that's something where that was a published toolbox from GeoCom that a lot of what that did has been migrated into the browser and kind of runs behind the scenes on that. So when we get into GIS Data Hub, I'm going to pop over into I use more often and has my password saved. Right. So in GIS Data Hub here, you have a login associated with your PSAP. I can switch between them because of the view I have, but you should automatically just log into your appropriate PSAP. And what you'll do is you'll submit data here in this main submit new data tab. And generally, it's best to do a complete data set. They implemented the ability to do partials. This is great if you're working through like a particular layer, say address points, and you're just constantly uploading through the day. But in my experience, and for really how most people use this, it's going to be a complete data set. Okay. So this can ingest both shapefiles and geodatabases. I'll get a little bit into the difference between those later. And what the GIS Data Hub is doing is it's trying to send every PSAP's data and standardize it into Nina's GIS data model. And so that doesn't mean that you have to adopt Nina model in your local PSAP. It just means that there have to be comparable fields that can be mapped during the upload process to populate those necessary fields. And once the submission's made, it goes through attribute and geometry checks. And then if it's free of critical errors, it gets aggregated into the statewide layers. Otherwise, it generates a fallout report of the errors that are preventing it from aggregating. What sorry. Okay. I was going to say something to note is that your last critical error free submission will always be retained. So if you introduce critical errors, it's not going to drop you from the aggregated data set. It's just what you contributed is the last critical error piece. And so we obviously don't want that to become out of date and depreciate in quality. I was going to say other handy links just down here. I think I have it later, but just the general GeoCom Kentucky team email. That's one of the best ways to get help as quickly as possible. There's multiple people. Sometimes you can get answers that differ based on how long someone's been on the team or how familiar they are with kind of the particularities of Kentucky. But yeah, no, it's definitely something I encourage everyone to not hesitate to get in contact with GeoCom if you ever encounter problems uploading, or honestly, like with best practices and other questions like that. I also include here the link to the GIS data model that Nina publishes. This is currently under revision. There's probably not going to be changes that significantly impact us. It gets into some very esoteric discussions about, you know, there's people who can spend all day getting into the weeds on this, but I would let you all know that I don't foresee anything changing in a major way, so that link should be good enough for the time being. Okay, so requirements. What we need at the board is every PSAP to upload their GIS data once per quarter. This is just a complete package. I'll get into the required layers a little bit later here, but that basically works by recertifying your PSAP and making you eligible to receive the funds we disperse out. And really just something is the earlier I know that Geocom knows that the person who's uploading has left your organization, the quicker we can set up things, we can change login credentials, etc. So again, my contact, Watson Harding at ky.gov, and then the GC team email. And so within these upload packages, there's a number of layers. Kind of a high level one that honestly most of us really don't need to get involved in is the provisioning boundary. That's basically who is responsible for the data within a certain polygon. And that's majority of times, this is just going to be the same as the PSET boundary. I have had some conflicting guidance from Geocom on whether provisioning boundary is necessary for an upload to go through or not. I've had it work both ways. So if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to make an upload, it keeps getting kicked back, and you're told the reason is there's not a provisioning boundary, it's the same geometry as the PSET boundary. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 fields. It's a very basic layer that shouldn't be too difficult to create based on the PSAP boundary. And so speaking of PSAP boundary, this is probably one of the most important layers, if not the most important layer, and it really answers where should the call go. So we're imagining that the call is a point out in the world, and it's going to be routing that call based on which PSAP polygon it falls within. And so these are usually based initially on existing boundaries like county, but as we'll see, this is a little more complicated, and we really get into more real life examples where it makes sense to deviate from things like county boundary. And really what we just need from you all is agreement with your neighboring PSAPs. So you can get in contact with me for more about that, but we have some ways of just documenting a agreed upon deviation from the county boundary. It's basically a sign off by both PSAP directors, possibly authorizing official. I would have to double check the form. But again, if you want help getting that in place or looking through our records to see what you have, get in touch with me. I can also give you contacts for your neighboring PSAP. We have all of that good stuff. And so yeah, this is an example of why real life is a little more complicated than just the county boundary. So we have a access issue for these houses in the overlap. So PSAP A is claiming it due to access issues. These houses can't be, easily accessed from PSAP B. And there's a number of ways to solve this. PSAP B has just followed the county boundary here. I would suggest kind of best practice is to have the PSAP with the best working relationship with responders. So in this case, likely PSAP A. Otherwise, it's PSAP B can just follow the boundary, but this carve out here is going to be likely emergency services from the neighboring county, and that will be reflected in PSAP-B submission. But as I said, it's kind of my feel on things is trying to keep things as simply as possible, of just if PSAP-A is used to, working with their emergency responders, and these PSAPs have agreed that PSAP-A will handle these houses because of access issues, then PSAP-A and PSAP-B should agree upon this boundary that looks like it's bumped in on the parcel. As I mentioned, it kind of is everything. So all the other features in an upload should be contained, or if it's a emergency service boundary or a polygon like that, coincident with the PSAP boundary. And there really should never be a situation where the PSAP boundary is empty, for lack of a better word, lacking emergency services and any portion. Just really that it is filled out with those underlying layers. So getting into that, we have responder, previously called emergency services boundaries, which are polygon layers for law, fire, and EMS. And what this does is, as that call is coming in as a point, is being populated with who the responder should be, basically. So it's cutting down on, or it's not really cutting down, it's doing a lot of behind the scenes work with attaching information to the call. And then we also have road center lines. And kind of how this works is it cascades through, like the ideal situation, caller has an XY, hits the appropriate PSAP, easy peasy. Road center lines, site and structure address points, those kind of get into both information that can be provided to dispatch, but also is kind of fallbacks for locating the caller if there's poor accuracy in their location. So road center lines, it's going to try, if it's unable to locate a caller otherwise, it's going to try to locate them based on the address range of that road center line feature. And then site and structure address points. That's again, like if someone is calling from a cell phone in their house, we're trying to deliver to dispatch that caller's address, because again, we're getting an XY and we want to associate it with the appropriate address number. And I believe eventually, I'll see it when it happens, but eventually it's the means by which landlines are connected through NG911. Basically, landline call goes to the provider. It's being associated with a site and structure address point, and it's using that point to route the call. And like anything, there's really a lot of explainers out there. It seems like every state really kind of has their informational sort of portal, and this was the one I found from Maryland. I think just for some very high level, like what does this do in one paragraph and why is it necessary? I think Pennsylvania has some good resources out there, in Tennessee, but you read enough of them and like they pretty much are the same, more or less. Okay. So one of the questions is, what exactly should be, what what should be collected under site and structure address points. So the minimum is any structure with an address, and that includes subunits like apartments. And kind of one of the challenges here is, well, I'll get to them next page in a little bit more detail, but really some of the breakthroughs on this are associating multiple structures with the same address. And so there are fields where points can share the same address number and they're differentiated on further fields like building. And really, the short answer is collect what you can maintain and collect what your responders and dispatchers will find useful, because there really aren't limits to potential granularity on this. I think it gets down even to seat in a building, which is great if you can get that data from local businesses and, you know, if they never renovate their office. But yeah, really, it's the challenge is always keeping data current as opposed to detailed but obsolete, because we really want to just keep the most important things as current as possible. And then this is kind of where we get into some of the need for the PSAP community here in Kentucky to get further into collaboration on their experiences and best practices. There's always going to be kind of weird examples, and we just really need to create consensus on how best to collect those. For example, something like a nursing home, is just the address point for the entire nursing home sufficient? And in a lot of cases, it probably is. But for reasons, you know, someone might think it's best to get in there and address every single room within the nursing facility. I can't tell you which one's right, which one's wrong. It's just something that needs to be figured out by the locals. And as I mentioned, it's something where I'm going to have to be seeking more input from you all, from the advisory council, just to kind of give you all a firmer answer than what do you think is best. But the truth is, it really is, what do you think is best? We have the minimum of the anything with an address, but it's really possible to go too into detail. And yeah, my advice, like, just try to keep things simple. Something that I know is kind of a hot topic right now is Z-axis or elevation. And kind of the simple truth is that's harder to accurately capture than XY. It's a whole geometry issue with, you know, how easy it is to calculate someone's location with GPS. And it's just elevation can easily become a rather nebulous rabbit hole, because then you get into a whole number of things. But some of this is going to be improvements implemented by carriers. I know tall multi-story buildings are probably the top priority with resolving a lot of these ongoing conversations about how to populate and utilize elevation to make sure that the call is, you know, not marrying to a address point for like the floor above or the floor below. And there's like a number of gadgetry, for lack of a better word, that carriers have to put into like large structures that are going to be issues. So our current progress, you all have done a fantastic job of really getting in this kind of getting our first draft of our statewide aggregated sets. So yeah, 5 PSAPs that have yet to be aggregated. They're all in some step of getting there. It's definitely something where once we have it together and once we're established with a vendor on core services and EZNet, then we're going to start finding, what needs to be fixed within our statewide layers. As I mentioned, it's kind of, are we done yet? Well, we're never actually fully done. I mean, things change, roads get built, houses get demolished. And really, the way to think about it is every PSAP contributes their piece of the puzzle, but we kind of sometimes need to like smooth out how those line up, making sure that neighboring PSAPs do their best to agree upon boundaries, to have their boundaries be coincidental and within the tolerances allowed by the geospatial routing. So really, gaps and overlaps is what we need to eliminate in the statewide kind of coverage where all the PSAP boundaries are together. And as I mentioned earlier, uploads go into GIS Data Hub. It's really great for attribute checks. The issue is kind of, it has a limited understanding of the geometry. So the most common geometry check it's doing is all features are within the PSAP boundary, or if you have a road center line, it's snapped to the PSAP boundary. It's not going to tell you if you're looking on the aerial imagery and the road center line's wildly off from where the road is. It's that's really something that needs to be brought to your attention when people notice it. And so, on the topic of managing your data, it's a matter of preference and resources on working internally or having an external contractor. I mean, there's a number of national companies and regional companies that do this kind of work. Unfortunately, like a lot of them are not cheap, but it's always worth asking. It costs nothing to, solicit a quote on that. And then area development districts can also be a alternative for outsourcing this GIS work to someone local and hopefully someone with some more competitive pricing as kind of a quasi-public entity. And as far as maintaining your data internally, you have to bear in mind that there are recurring costs to that. It's having the software to edit GIS data. It's having the salary for a dedicated staff person, and it's having time really for them to get comfortable, to get up to speed, and to work through some of these regular processes. And something that something that is out there is greater collaboration with other local government offices, if that's county planning, if that's your PVA. If you get into situations where you can share the cost of a position basically with another GIS intensive local government entity, that's a way of really like getting help for both of y'all and kind of diffusing some of those costs. So there's a few options on the type of GIS software that can be used. There's ArcGIS, which is the umbrella term for software published by Esri. And this is this is kind of like Microsoft in, you know, Office Place applications. Like there are alternatives, but if we're going to be honest, it's somewhat of a monopoly, and sometimes we are at the whims of what ESRI decides to change. There are alternatives. QGIS has always been, well, has been out there for a number of years. That's a free and open source GIS software, kind of like OpenOffice, Firefox, Linux. I'll get a little bit more into that specifically. And then there's third-party editors. I think one that a lot of people here in Kentucky work with is GeoConnects. And often these are basically built off of Esri in the background, and the vendor is trying to simplify regular processes like adding an address, etc. And I'll get into some of the disadvantages later on here. So with ArcGIS, there's currently 2 environments out there. So there's the 10.x. I think I have 10.7. There's a wide range of numbers on that, but the important thing is the last supported version of that is 10.8.2, and that is in mature support currently and appears to be planned to retire in 2026. Now, this doesn't mean that if you're currently working with, ArcMap 10, whatever, that you need to make the transition tomorrow, but it is something to be aware of, and that there are going to be costs associated with getting your ArcPro license, and just something to think longer term about with what you're encouraging staff to work with. I know I personally have held off for the longest time on going to ArcPro. I think I finally got an installation earlier this month, and the big impetus for me was there's a regular process I do weekly where there was a tool where I could take something that I manually do and have it in a script in ArcPro. So in that case, it's, I found the need, and it's kind of time for me to start getting more familiar with ArcPro. But again, it's just simply don't run out and buy like a 10-something license just because one day like that will be, out of date. And eventually things pile up and cause issues with functionality. And kind of ArcPro, ArcGIS Pro, there are, I'm going to be very opinionated here, but there are things that tick me off about it. There's this trend towards integration with ArcGIS Online, which a lot of times isn't necessary for most users. I don't know. People are different. This just because I learned on 10 and I'm resisting change. But yeah, some of my other gripes are just kind of there's transition into a subscription model for licensing. I have that later on in here. I think they advertise the creator or a basic license at $700 a year, but when you actually read about what you can do with that license, it's not sufficient for what most people working with 911 data need to be able to do with editing and maintaining data. And of course, as I mentioned, Esri is more or less a monopoly, so sometimes it can be a pain to find consistency in the terms they use to describe the different license levels. So that's why I have it bracketed here. Looking at it, professional standard license level seems to cover what most everyone would need to do or need to be able to do with their GIS software. And really, as I said, there's recurring subscription cost, and there's kind of a lot of bloat with what Esri tries to sell you with add-ons and extensions. They have a credit system for working with data on ArcGIS Online. As I said, it's just be mindful of not getting talked into more than what you actually need. And just one kind of funny note on something that is different and potentially helpful for y'all is licensing is managed with your organization's ArcGIS Online account. So I know it's a pain to have another login that y'all need to keep track of, but the advantage is if someone walks out with a GIS laptop and quits their job, there's a way to, unauthorize that software through AGOL and, get someone else set up on it. So QGIS is another option. As I mentioned, it's open source, aka free. And really, it's come a long way in terms of comparable functionality to ArcGIS. There are some proprietary ESRI kind of data types that actually there's been conversions developed to work with those in QGIS, and kind of the secret is QGIS and Esri aren't fully independent environments. As things get developed or implemented in one or the other, you'll kind of see some competition there, and really, not a tremendous loss of functionality. I will say I have maybe 1 to 3 hours in QGIS. By and large, most people, most personnel you would be interviewing are probably most familiar with Esri products. So ArcGIS, ArcMap. ArcMap's basically part of the ArcGIS suite, and then, current, latest and greatest ArcPro. And as I said, the learning curve isn't necessarily more, it's just different. So if you're someone who's more comfortable working with open source software, it's something I encourage you to check out. Because again, you can get a lot of bang for your buck when your buck is 0. And then third-party mapping software. As I mentioned, these provide a simplified map viewer and editor. Kind of the idea behind a lot of these products is to simplify tasks like adding an address for the PSAP, but something that we can easily run into is the lack of functionality for the end user on making necessary edits to their data to make it critical error free. I know people have encountered issues with populating fields that NG911 requires that weren't in the editing product provided to them by their vendor. And it's just something to be aware of if you're seeking a new software package, is you're really adding an extra layer of to your workflow. So you can become dependent on sending a list of needed changes to your vendor, and it is what it is. Just something to be aware of. There is it is something that I would not recommend pursuing, but I know sometimes CAD vendors bundle a mapping software product. When they sell you a CAD, if it's there, if you have a good working relationship with their support, there's no rush to go out and change over to one of the Esri products or QGIS. But again, it's just something to be aware of, that there's going to be that extra step of, well, I can't edit the data as fully as I need to, so I'm in communication with this third party and then kind of beholden to their schedule on implementing changes and getting your data cleaned up. And then something we get asked often is training resources. Unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for this. ESRI and QGIS have free tutorials out there. There are YouTube tutorials. There isn't necessarily a place that can tell you all this is the definitive best learning materials. It's really something where you have to get your toes wet. You just have to familiarize yourself with working in the product environment. And honestly, a lot of what I do and what a lot of other GIS people do is Googling for answers and finding on the ESRI community board or other forum boards, you can find people with similar questions and at least get a starting point of what to look up and what to learn there. So moving on into some tips and tricks, I'm going to just have a quick slide here on shapefiles versus geodatabase, and then kind of have 3 demo items where I'm going to switch over to ArcMap and ArcPro here to show y'all. But these are just some great things of just regular tasks that can be sped up and made a bit easier. Shapefiles versus geodatabases. These are the 2 most common file storage methods for geographic data, for GIS data. And so shapefiles, they're still commonly used. It's kind of carrying on this legacy role as a shareable format between a lot of different products. Sometimes people need shapefiles to load their data onto a CAD. The thing is, when you're working with them, kind of be aware that the shapefile is actually multiple files, the geometry of the feature, I think the table of the feature. It can be easy to lose track of one of those constituent pieces of your shapefile, and then that could be why it's not working. And so when you're zipping up to, then also, this is something I learned recently was the threshold for when shapefiles become unstable. So I was helping someone who was downloading our statewide aggregated data set of site and structure address points, and they were contacting me with, hey, why are the attributes in this particular area so weird? And I did some digging, and what happens is when one of the constituent parts of the shapefile gets too large, so in this case, if it's site and structure address points, that's over 1 million for the entire Commonwealth of Kentucky, and they become unstable. So it was basically, it had hit kind of that data limit of what the shapefile could support, and then it was just attaching attributes, back from the beginning of the list. So I don't think most people will run into that issue, but it's definitely something where I would consider transitioning away from shapefiles when possible. And I find geodatabases to be kind of a more stable format to work in. Technically, it's a proprietary format from Esri, but there are conversion tools to and from QGIS to make them editable in that software product. And there's some like greater functionality that you can take advantage of with geodatabases. Kind of like the two main ones are domains, so being able to have a limited list of values for a field. So if you have row type and you're worried about mistyping things, you can basically have distinct values, road, avenue, street, like that are in a drop down list. And as far as the geometry, there's some functionality with topology, which would probably be like a good future presentation, because that can get a little technical, but topology is just verifying the relationship between different layers, and so it's checks for things like crossovers and gaps, and it's basically like rules you can set where the emergency service has to be coincidental with the PSEP boundary. As I said, good later thing, but yeah, the important thing to remember is you can always export from a geodatabase to a shapefile if need be. So again, if your CAD still in just shapefiles and you're maintaining your data in a geodatabase, it's pretty easy to export your data out into shapefiles and then get that delivered to the CAD. And so when uploading to GIS Data Hub, just to be aware, if you're going to be uploading shapefiles, verify that all your layers are in the same folder, that all the constituent files are in the same folder. I mean, just pop it into ArcGIS and make sure, it will tell you if it's, missing something, because it'll pop up with that lovely error message. But you send the folder with the shapefiles in it to a zip and then upload that zip with a geodatabase. If you go in and you double click on this Q3 Carol GDB, it'll be a lot of gobbledygook, but it's a lot simpler of just, zip the GDB and then submit to GIS Data Hub. Oop. So I'm going to go back here to kind of some tips and tricks, some things that I think are handy to know how to do in ArcGIS here. So I think one of the most important things is really getting a handle of understanding where your GIS data exactly lives. It's really easy to just open MXD. MXD is just this viewer, saved out into something you can open later, kind of like a project. And it will, retain the layers you previously had in there. But if this is something that you've inherited, it's very easy to be editing an older location of your data. And so the thing is, in a table of contents, that's a good way just to verify that you're working with the correct data. So in this table of contents, we list by drawing order. That's default. It's just putting those, from bottom to top. I can pause here. Oop. Okay, am I still sharing? Okay. Am I vexed out of the presenter mode trying to get out of PowerPoint there? But yeah, so switching over to source tab.
I think you got an email from, we all got an email from Bill. Check that out and see if there's something going on with the pop-ups. It could be he needs clear his cache, but check it out. You see it? Bill Mark.
Hey, Mark, can you meet them? Or meet yourself? Okay. So yeah, so the source tab is a great way just to switch over quickly and, see the full file path of your data. The other way to do that is in this catalog tree. It still exists as a separate application, but it also exists as a integrated window in ArcMap and in ArcPro, and that's a good way for kind of having a more traditional sort of file structure. Get in there and navigate to your data. You can drag and drop things, and another thing that can make things easier is making folder connections. So this button's in both catalog and then also in the add data screen. It's this little folder with a plus sign. And what this is you're just you're creating like a quick path basically to that folder. So say I'm working on Carroll County's data. I made that folder connection to Carroll under PSAP GIS, and down in my drop down, it's on there as one of the quick things I can go to. And it's pretty similar in ArcPro. A lot of stuff with Esri doesn't really change all that much. It just changes enough to be annoying. So I think on this, yeah. So the add folder is your folder connection. To move to a different tab, I don't think it's it's no longer in the add data dialog. Who knows why, but it's here under insert, add, and pop that in there. And then here we have it in our quick drop down. And here again in ArcPro, similar table of contents. Kind of the default view is the drawing order, but we can switch over to the source tab here and see each layer and exactly where it resides. Let's see here. We have 5 minutes left. I am going to selections and field calculations. If y'all are good, I'm going to run a little over just because I think these are some really neat things to kind of make your life easier. But popping in here to our address points, I mean, we're all pretty familiar with selecting by location. If we want address range points that, let's see here. I mean, this is, I'm just going to, touch on this briefly. You can select by location, get a little bit more into them in the future. The example I preloaded here, this is a lot more useful with something like Fallout. So that Fallout report generated in GIS Data Hub, that spits out both a CSV, like a spreadsheet table, but now GeoCom automatically creates a geodatabase of fallouts from that, and those are broken out into the error type. And so if it's something like duplicate addresses, I can select by location from addresses, and then I would select, duplicate addresses in here. And so I can do, where there's an intersection, maybe I put, 5 meters on there, just it should be right on top of the point, but there's always the potential for things to be just a little bit off. I don't know. I'm a little overly cautious on that sometimes, but it's Esri. Sometimes things work in the most unexpected ways, and it is what it is. I think kind of a more powerful selection is your select by attributes. And this is a dialog window where you can filter features based on a query. So if I'm going to do, let's say, okay. Mark says I have a hand raised. Sharon, is it still you? You have a question?
No, you fixed it. Thank you.
All right, great. Yeah, so for selection by attributes, this is really great for filtering out based on can't really articulate this well. Filtering out features based on a query on the attributes. So if I'm, say, checking for typos in legacy street type, I can, double click legacy street type here, equals, and then its get unique values is great for, it gives you, a simplified drop down or, scrollable, like every distinct, value that's in that field. So, I mean, it's very good for finding things like, well, here we can see, looks like we have two different things with terrace potentially. If that's something we want to look into further, double click on tear, apply, and if this was a circumstance where those need to be changed, this ties into the kind of the second little point I want to have here. So what if I just want to check that terrace is abbreviated properly? So they do it as TER. Well, that looks good. Let's say, just for the sake of the example, we're in Australia and we need to change this to TCE. So I've selected every address point where the legacy street type is TER. And this is something that you can do outside of an editing session. You probably want to start an editing session just to be able to undo things, but field calculations are really awesome way to just take care of those batch edits pretty quickly here. So I'll make sure that I'm editing against site and structure points. And then I'll make sure that I'm only viewing the selected records, so those that were TER. So if I right click on the field here, so legacy street type, and go to field calculator, I can populate that with TCE in quotations there. And, second, it's changed all 38 of those over to TCE instead of TER. Again, just an example. We're not really in Australia, but it's yeah, it's really good if you get an error of or if you catch like multiple misspellings or something. Let's say like street direction. I'll clear my selection here. Go back to all features. And then select by attributes. Let's say we're going to check for any street directionals that are, you know, not north, south, east, west, northwest, southeast, southwest. So, hey, these are good. You can say for sake of argument here that we got back and learned that we don't actually have any streets that are northwest. Someone years ago populated those as northwest, but they should actually be northeast. We can apply that attribute selection, so grab everywhere where it's northwest, up over to selected records, go to our post directional, and again, pop in there. So I mean, really, if you take nothing else from this, just selections and field calculations, those fallouts that come out from GeoCom where it's like, hey, these following features are missing an attribute and it's the same for nearly all of them. That is one of the best ways just to take care of those very quickly here. For the sake of time, I'm not going to get into how to do the similar thing into ArcPro, but it's same but different, to be honest. It's annoying when things get moved from where you're familiar with them, but as I said, it's kind of the realities of Esri being more or less a monopoly and kind of a GIS software here. So just kind of open up the floor for questions. Okay. Going once. Going twice. All right. Well, again, I want to thank you all for attending today. We're going to be trying to do more technical training, but as I mentioned, this is kind of, you know, if you're needing to communicate with GIS executive, like other types of officials, and they're like, why do we need to invest in GIS? It's this kind of, you know, sort of kind of like that managerial view of, you know, why we need it, what's out there. And again, the most important thing is I'm here to help. I don't always necessarily get to things as timely as I should, but, you know, I'm always willing when I find the time to, you know, get in the weeds with you on this. And as I mentioned, also the GeoCom team, the board's paying them money to provide this service. You know, let's get our money's worth out of them. If y'all encounter issues uploading, etc., or you know, want to ask them as knowledge experts, you know, how would you handle this situation? They are also there as a resource. So yeah. Is that it, Mark?
That is it. I want to thank you all for joining us. This is recorded. It will be available in the next couple of weeks on our webpage as well. And thank you all. Look forward to seeing you all again in the educational initiatives we have coming up. Thank you.
Thanks.